you don't have faith and if you don't have hope. Now, when we talk about hope, here's where I think the big issue lies and where people have so much of a hard time kind of understanding what hope is. Because love, we think of as an action word. Like you fall in love, you show somebody love, right? Faith, we think of that as an action word. You're believing. But when we think of hope, it tends to be a passive thing. Almost like a wish, or like something in the nebulous that might happen and might not happen. Right? We hope things go well. That's an action that we think of as being done to us. We hope things will work out. But I'm here to tell you that much like faith and love, hope is an action word. It is a verb, and we forget that it's an action word. We think that it's something that happens to us. Now, I would like to read the definition of hope from Vine's Bible Dictionary. And Vine's, they do a really good job with kind of giving a biblical definition of things. So, in Vine's Biblical Dictionary, here's what hope is defined as. A favorable and confident expectation. Now, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time that you thought of hope as being an expectation? Again, a lot of times when we think of hope, and maybe it's just me, but I doubt it. When we think of hope, it's something that might happen. It's almost like a wish. But no, biblically speaking, hope is a favorable and confident expectation that something is going to happen. So you see, when we hope, it is not something that is done to us. It is not a passive thing. We have an expectation. And I want you to notice how faith and hope are intertwined here. Right? Even though it doesn't say it, if you have a confident expectation, you are showing faith that that thing that you're hoping for is going to happen. So again, Paul talks about the three greatest that remain: faith, love, and hope. We see how they're all intertwined and interconnected like a three-strand braid. And for those of you that do hair, you know a three-strand braid is pretty tough. Right? Now, right, Eve? Yeah. Because I'm just to the twist now. I haven't made it to the braid part yet. So, when we talk about hope, understand that just like when we talk about love, it involves faith and hope. When we talk about hope, it involves faith and love. Because if we are going to love someone and truly love them, we are going to hope the best for them. We are going to have that confident, favorable expectation. Right? We don't just think things are passively going to happen to the person that we love. We don't just think that, well, they might do well. We expect. Okay? And it's a favorable thing. A lot of times the other thing, and let's be honest, we've all seen people like this who are Christians and who are not Christians, that when we hope, sometimes we hope for bad things to happen. Right? That person that cuts you off, you're like, I hope they get a ticket. Where's a police officer when I need one? Right? That person who, when you're at like the buffet, they take all the like beef out of the beef and broccoli. Right? And you're like, good brother, I'm sorry. We will pray for him. We all know a beef taker. Those are not people. So again, this idea of hope. It is a favorable, confident expectation, right? And so when we're going to hope, and when we go into Hebrews here, we'll see what that looks like and what we're talking about with hope, okay? But when we hope, we should have a happy anticipation. We should have kind of the end in mind. Now, of course, the Lord can and does sometimes change that. But if our hope is in the Lord, then that confident expectation is going to be that whatever God is doing is going to be for the best. And so, like I said, we're not going to spend very much time in 1 Corinthians, but I just wanted to give us that background about what hope is and how it's tied to love and to faith. And so, if we as Christians are going to really profess our faith, if we're really going to say, this is what I believe, and we talk about loving our brothers and loving the stranger and loving the widow and loving the orphan and loving, yes, even our enemies, we need to have confident expectations for those people. We have to hope for them. We have to hope for the widow. We have to hope for the orphan. We have to hope for our brothers, our sisters, our pastors, our church, our enemies. We need to have good things happen for them if we are going to profess the love that we say that we have. Now, again, for some of us, that's not easy. But you know what? That's what God has called us to do. And so, my hope for you, my confident and favorable expectation, is that we will be able to hope and love for those who maybe don't even love us. Because that's what Christ did, and that's what he would want us to do. And if you would, please, go ahead and turn with me to Hebrews chapter 6. Now, if you're there, give me an amen. If you need a second, give me a hallelujah.
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 Amen. Amen. Like I said, we should be able to, I don't know if the screen comes back out, but it should be on Easy Worship, so you can have that if anybody doesn't have it. Now, with Hebrews chapter 6, here's the deal. Paul starts off by talking about not backsliding. This chapter is a chapter warning people against kind of falling away from the gospel and falling away from Christ. And so from verses 1 through 8, he's kind of talking about, hey, there are people who have fallen away. This is what they look like. This is what happens. This is the pattern when people fall away from Christ. They aren't laying their foundation on God. They aren't looking to the Lord. They're staying on milk and not going to meat. And so the first part of this is Paul kind of laying out the case and saying, hey, this is what it looks like when people fall away from God. This is what it looks like when people backslide.
Somebody liked it.
But then he kind of turns the tables in chapter 9. Because he'd been speaking kind of harshly. He'd been kind of critical. You know, kind of, not necessarily a jerk, but just very critical. And he turns the tables in verse 9 and says, even though we were speaking this way, dear friends, in your case, we are confident, notice there's that word that goes with expectation again, or with hope again. We are confident of better things connected with salvation. So he said, hey, yes, this is what happens, and I know people do regress, but I am confident that there are better things in store if you are holding fast to your salvation. So then he goes on in chapter 10 to say, for God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you showed for his name when you served the saints and continue to serve them. So again, if we look, we see that love and hope are intertwined. Okay? We have this idea here that when we're serving, when we are showing love to those others, that we are placing our hope in Christ to do what he said he was going to do. And we are placing our hope, our confident expectation, in the fact that there is a better way, there is a better salvation. So, as we go forth in our life, as we go forth and kind of do what we do as Christians, it is important that we continue to work and serve others. Right? And when we do that, again, we need to hope, have that favorable, confident expectation that what we are doing is not in vain. And we can have that hope, that favorable, confident expectation, because the Lord has told us that his word will not come back to him void. He has told us that when we work for his behalf, when we do things for the least of these, we do it unto him. He has told us that from the beginning, he has been there, he will not leave us, and he will not forsake us. So this idea of hope, again, is built on something. It's built on the faith that we have because of what Christ has done for us and what he continues to do. So as we say that we hope, and as we go out and serve in love, we can be confident in that expectation because of the track record that God has given before us. And if we look at verse 11, now we want each of you to demonstrate the same diligence for the final realization of your hope. So again, we started off by saying that hope is not a passive thing. Even though a lot of us think of it as something that happens to us, hope is not passive. And we see here in the text that we need to demonstrate diligence. We need to keep plowing. We need to keep working. We need to keep doing the things that we're doing, because that is how the final realization of that hope comes around. Right? And that hope, again, is built on Jesus Christ. But notice what he says in 12. So that we will not become lazy, but will become imitators of those who inherit the promises through faith and perseverance. So as we hope and as we work, the idea is that we do not become lazy. And honestly, it's really easy to become lazy. It's really easy to let your hope just be that passive hope. But God has called us to an aggressive, life-changing, loving hope. And so when we can start to have that favorable, confident expectation of what's going to happen, we will see things change in the lives of ourselves and those who are around us. Because hope is one of those three things right up there with love and faith. We profess faith. We profess love. Let's start professing hope. Let's start giving the world a hope. Let's start giving the world that confident, favorable expectation. God has given us not only the ability to do that, but the mandate to do that. And so I say, let's go and charge in and do that. Let us be bastions of hope for people. Let us speak hope into people's lives. And again, I'm not talking about I hope you get better. I hope this happens. No, I'm talking about a favorable, confident expectation. Brother, I know this will work out. Brother, let me tell you about the hope that I have. Sister, let me tell you what Christ has done. That's the kind of hope that changes lives. That's the kind of hope that changes the world. And that's the kind of hope that those first early Christians had as they were being slaughtered, as they were being tortured, as they were being brutally abused and beaten. They had a confident expectation that the Lord was going to do the right thing. And if we skip down to verse 18, so that through two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie. I want to pause there. How many of us truly understand and believe and love that point to our core? It is impossible for God to lie. Right? God doesn't tell the little white lies. God doesn't. That's right, G. You tell me. God does not lie. He cannot lie. It is impossible for him to lie. So, a lot of times, we take human characteristics and plop them onto God. Right? It's hard for some of us to trust that it's impossible for God to lie because, let's be honest, humans lie. We all lie. There is not anybody in this room who's never told a lie. I know, it's crazy. Well, maybe Steve has it. We don't know his resume well enough. But I'm going to go out on the limb and say that it was probably a little white lie. Probably something about like the toilet seat being up or something. But we've all told lies. That was a big discussion. Well, no, it was a different discussion around the Seymour household today. But we talked about it. It is impossible for God to lie. So if God says something is going to happen, it's going to happen. Now the thing is, a lot of times we forget to listen. And so we lose that hope. We lose that confident expectation. As we read, as we pray, as we tarry, as we work with God, as we let the Holy Spirit just work on us, God will give us something. God will tell us something. Hey, this is going to happen. But then we put a time limit on it. Okay? And when we put a time limit on it and it doesn't happen, then we start to regress in our faith, making it impossible for that realization to happen. So I encourage you to stay the course, to steady with God, because it is impossible for him to tell a lie. And if he's told you something is going to happen and it hasn't happened yet, it's just not time for it to happen. Ask Abraham and Sarah. Sometimes it takes time. But God is building his Spirit in you through that time, through that patience, through that work. And so it is important for us to stay the course. It is important for us to make sure that we have that confident expectation. Excuse me. Because when we lose that confident expectation, God can't work through us the way that he wants to work through us. And that is one of the tricks of the enemy. As we lose hope, it is much easier for the enemy to steal our joy. It is much easier for us to forget about love. And yes, it is even much easier for us to fall away from our faith.
Amen.
So hope is the bedrock on which all these other things are built upon. That confident expectation is the bedrock, is the foundation for love, for faith, for all these other things to happen. And I love what it says in verse 19 when we get there. We who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to seize the hope set for us. And then this part right here. We have this hope as an anchor for our lives, safe and secure. As we go forth, and as we have hope in our lives, it becomes the thing that keeps us grounded, that keeps us in place. Okay? Now, a lot of times, when we think about an anchor, we think about a ship that's like docked in a port, right? But really, anchors aren't as important when you're docked in a safe harbor. An anchor is more important when you're docked out there, not in a harbor, but just out, right? When you're in the harbor, the water's calm, there's a nice little dock there, there's a place for you to tie up your boat. The anchor itself isn't that important. But when you're out sailing and you just stop for the night, and you're just out in the middle of the ocean, that's when the anchor becomes important. That's what keeps you grounded and safe and secure. So, a lot of us, I believe, as Christians, we have our anchors, which is hope. But we try to use our anchors when we're in the harbor, when we're in the sanctuary, when we're in the church. We talk about hope here. But we've got to live it out there.
Amen.
Because if we don't, then what's the point?
Amen. That's real.
Now, it is the inner sanctuary behind the curtain. A little bit of kind of church history here. And I know for those of us that have been in reflections, we've kind of read about the tabernacle and stuff like that. But with the tabernacle, or with the tent of gathering that the Hebrews built in the Old Testament, there was an outer sanctuary where people would go to worship and the priest would be. And then there was an inner sanctuary that only the high priest could go to. And if anybody who was not authorized, anybody who was not the high priest went there, LJ, what happened to them?
He died.
They died. And when you went into the inner sanctuary, you had to go with like a rope tied around your waist, because if you weren't holy and you died, somebody else couldn't go in there to get you. They had to drag your carcass out. So this idea of an inner sanctuary here is very important. Jesus has entered there on our behalf as a forerunner. Our high priest is Jesus Christ. And he is the one who has access to the inner sanctuary that can go and intercede for us, that can speak on our behalf, that can talk for us. And because we have Jesus as our high priest, because we have God who is there on the throne as our high priest, as the one who intercedes for us, we can have hope. We can have a confident expectation that good things will happen. Because the one who is there on our behalf is the one who made it all. And so I would like to encourage you again to make hope a daily part of your life. Yes, we make faith a daily part of our life. Yes, we make love a daily part of our life. But how many of us have made that confident expectation of hope a daily part of our life? And so I encourage you, I challenge you to do that, to make hope a daily part of our life. And as we wrap up, I love our praise team because I just threw this on them right before the service. But they're like, oh yeah, we got this. There is one of those good old-fashioned, old-time hymns that I want to have us sing. It is 436 in your hymnal. I think we have it. I'm going to invite you to come and sing The Solid Rock. And as you sing, I want you to think about what these words actually mean. My hope, my confident, favorable expectation is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus. And remember, he is our high priest. He is the one that is interceding for us. He is the one who cannot tell a lie. It is impossible for him to tell a lie. That is where we're putting our trust. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds with him in vail. And remember, that anchor is not for when you're in the harbor. That anchor is for when you're out, when you're in that storm, when you're in that sea. Okay? That's when ships use their anchor. That third verse, and I promise I'll let you guys say it. His oath, his covenant, his blood, all these things talk about a contract in which lying cannot be a part of. If you have an oath or a covenant, that cannot be broken. Support me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. Let those words seep into your heart and into your spirit as we go forth and sing this. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to praise team.